Greetings, netizens of YouTube. It's likely come to your attention that one of the favoured sources of anti-feminists and the anti-SJW community on YouTube is the British Daily Mail. It won't surprise anybody familiar with the press to know that the Daily Mail has a long history of inaccurate reporting, clickbait headlines, celebrity drivel, and upon providing its readers with a dumbed-down version of the news with a right-wing perspective. In fact, just days ago, Wikipedia decided to remove the Daily Mail as a reliable source to be used to support its entries altogether. Wikipedia editors pointed to, quote, the Daily Mail's reputation for poor fact-checking, sensationalism, and flat-out fabrication, unquote. Other media outlets such as Russia Today and even Fox News and many other right-leaning publications are still used by Wikipedia, just before anybody feeds into the right-wing media persecution narrative. So, a couple of days back, I watched a video by Noel Plum, which was a response of sorts to a bearing video that I hadn't watched at the time, named UK Medical Association Bans the Word Mother.
Don't call pregnant patients mothers. Doctors are banned from using the word over fears it will upset those who are transgender. Official guidelines issued by the British Medical Association says mothers-to-be should be referred to as pregnant people. See what I mean? It's just so inclusive. It's fucking heartwarming.
Reactionary sarcasm aside, the first thing I wondered was whether the source on which both their videos was based was reliable. Noel Plum kindly left a link to a Daily Mail article whose text bearing had basically transposed from written form into a video representation of his own views. The piece injected the usual themes popular among Daily Mail readers and YouTube anti-SJWs, political correctness and transgender issues, etc. Seems a bit drastic, was my first response. My second was to search for the devil in the detail, to see whether the Daily Mail had a real story in the text. My skeptic senses were already tingling about the alleged ban. The Mail's body contradicted the headline, since it explained that the BMA was only advising its employees to adopt language that would be least likely to cause offence to those they came into contact with. There was no evidence any ban existed. This seemed very familiar, and then I remembered that almost exactly the same thing happened in another case where an anti-feminist, Karen Strawn, used the Daily Mail as a source to support her argument in a video response she made to me. Karen claimed that judges had been ordered or mandated to discriminate in favour of female offenders based on a Daily Mail headline. After 5 minutes or so of research, I discovered that changes had been made to the British Equal Treatment Bench Book, a book that judges can refer to for advice. The supposed order was a lie, just as the ban was in this case. And in both cases we had anti-feminists re-reporting lies to their audiences as a means to back up their pre-existing narrative, a staple of their YouTube brand. The next step was to corroborate or to throw out the other claims made in the Mail piece, repeated by Baring.
Get a load of this shit I found on the Daily Mail's website.
A simple search using the keywords BMA Guide to Effective Communication gave me all the results I needed. At the bottom of page 11 of an advisory booklet published almost a year ago, we can see the reason why the Daily Mail, The Sun, Fox News and the Daily Telegraph ran with the story. Must have been a slow news day, eh chaps, to scrape that old fish and chip wrapper out of the basket and dress it up as headline news. Less clear was to whom this written advice was being provided to.
775,000 women give birth in Britain every year. Doctors now have to refer to all those expectant mothers as pregnant people, to spare the feelings of transgender people who may become pregnant. Never mind the fact that there's been a grand total of 1 so far.
Another few strokes of the keyboard, and this in the Daily Telegraph's report. A BMA spokesman said, "This is a guide for BMA staff and representatives aimed at promoting an inclusive workplace at the BMA. It is not workplace guidance for doctors, which is clear from the fact it does not refer to patients." We can quibble about the definition of fake news, but the Daily Mail's lead was clearly false, and based on some supposedly controversial words buried in an old booklet which doesn't apply to the thousands of doctors and nurses of the NHS. But lest I'm accused of avoiding the transgender issue and alleged political correctness which Baring mentions in his video, to begin with, a slight correction to Baring and Noel Plum. This is the only reported case of a transgender person in the UK deciding to have a baby. The only one we know about. Also, seeing as this booklet is some months old, there is no evidence to support the speculation that the BMA changed their practices for internal staff on the basis of this one case. Far more likely take into account are estimates of trans people and the proportion of those that have or will discuss the potential for getting pregnant with BMA employees. This is a minor quibble, but it follows from accepting a report without skepticism and making assumptions from inaccuracies and lies. Take Freddie McConnell, a transgender man who has stated that he may decide to carry a child in the future. Of the booklet issues stirred up by the media, he states, "What they're saying in this document is, if you're talking to a trans man or an intersex man about being pregnant, don't call him an expectant mother. If you call me that, it's incorrect. And it's going to make me feel like you're not talking about me. You don't see me. You don't get where I'm coming from. And I wonder where it is going to leave me as a patient under your care. It signals rigidity and close-mindedness. But it's really important to say we're not interested in redefining motherhood or taking away that word. We're just trying to be seen." Take the false headlines and alarmism away, and it sounds entirely reasonable. Surely you would agree. I'm going to be honest about my past instincts. Back in the 90s, when I was still working out my place in the world, certain sections of the media were talking about changes in language. Specifically, words such as spokesman were becoming spokeswoman or spokesperson. Like the Sunday Times, which I nerdily read at the time, I felt this was absurd. How ridiculous to care about the form rather than the function, I thought. I'm against this nonsense. Later on, the term firefighter came along. I don't remember having an opinion on this one. It's as if on one day I just woke up and it was the new normal. But I might have felt the same way. At this point, we could have a debate about gendered language, and yes, I thought of it from that perspective. I could stick my social justice cap on and argue against those traditional words on the basis that they refer to a time where men were dominant in these professions or when men dominated society, while women were expected to remain at home. But I'm not really angry or offended about language. However, and this is the key point, it costs me nothing at all if new words are introduced on the basis that some people might be offended by old words. While it's true that some people are never happy, I'm happy to alter my language to not upset anybody deliberately. And in return, if by mistake I use a word that offends them, they will forgive me, knowing my good intent. And if they don't and have a go at me instead, I won't be too hard on myself, and I'll consider adopting new words. It's impossible, by the way, to make me feel guilty or resentful, as others seem to complain about, if I use language people take offense to, because I know it's not deliberate, even if they don't. It's not rocket science, and I don't understand why some people seem to have such a problem with it.
Don't you love how progressives just want to be inclusive? I mean, they love being inclusive so much that if you don't want to be inclusive, you can just fuck off and die.
On the first page of BMA's Guide to Effective Communication, quote, "This guide promotes good practice through the use of language that shows respect for and sensitivity towards everyone. The choice of appropriate words makes an important contribution towards the celebration of diversity. As well as avoiding offense, it's about treating each other with dignity as equal members of an integrated community. Language is dynamic, and terms disappear, re-emerge, and are revised. We all need to be sensitive to changing expressions and meanings as they emerge. This is entirely in line with my opinion. So hell yeah, I support the BMA's advice." Now let's return to fake news and how Baring repeats the fake news of the Daily Mail. We have the Daily Mail that lies to millions of readers, and then there are the anti-SJW YouTubers who pass the lie on to hundreds of thousands of their viewers. Outrage is duly caused, making rational discussion difficult. But it does beg the question. Stupidity stroke laziness, deliberate deception, or a combination of the two. You have to remember that fear and outrage sells, so accurate and factual reporting of events are not in the interests of the media or of YouTube content creators that make a living from clickbait. In the case of the Daily Mail, I lean towards deception, or as others appear to be calling it, fake news. They knew, for example, that it was a lie to claim that the BMA banned calling mothers mothers. Don't believe me? Oh ye of little cynicism. Consider this report that appeared. Hold on a minute. This was a report that appeared in the Daily Mail. It was taken from the Press Association and contains all the necessary facts to refute the Daily Mail's piece. So perhaps this was some kind of backhanded correction after the event. The Daily Mail had the facts at its fingertips, but chose to manufacture outrage for its own political agenda against political correctness, against trans people, and to sell copy. In the case of Bearing, I lean towards laziness.
775,000 women give birth in Britain every year. Doctors now have to refer to all those expectant mothers as pregnant people to spare the feelings of transgender people who may become pregnant. Never mind the fact that there's been a grand total of 1 so far.
But let's face it, a lot of people are lazy. The problem is that if you're too lazy to do only a few clicks worth of research and read a few paragraphs, then you can't be trusted to accurately provide people with information. And this stands for everyone, not just Bearing. Now if Bearing happens to come by this video, I'd be interested in an explanation. Am I expecting too much? Are my standards too high? I don't know if Bearing is considered to be part of the YouTube skeptic community, not to be confused with the real-life skeptic community of James Randi et al. But isn't it about time that some skepticism was applied to media sources that are known to embellish, exaggerate, and outright lie? Suffice to say, I exchanged comments with Noel Plum as soon as I twigged that the headline was a lie. He seems a little more relaxed about Daily Mail standards than I am, although I agree with him that the online version of the Mail is more celebrity garbage. The print version and the online version publish equal amounts of economy with the truth. In answer to your question, Noel, as to whether the Mail published this story in print, yes they did. On the front page, mind you.
When it comes to the way society interacts with trans people, I certainly don't think any head-in-the-sand type band-aid solutions are going to do any good in the long term, i.e. banning doctors from using the words expectant mother. Cheerio.